Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul, by Jane Roberts, read by Martin John. Continuation Part 2, Chapter 14. Session 559, November 9, 1970, 9:18 p.m. Monday. Good evening. Now for dictation. We will begin the next chapter. It will be called Stories of the Beginning and the Multidimensional God. How do you like that? As the present life of any individual rises from hidden dimensions beyond those easily accessible in physical terms, and as it draws its energy and power to act from unconscious sources, so does the present physical universe as you know it rise from other dimensions. So does it have its source and derive its energy from deeper realities. History, as you know it, represents but one single light upon which you focus. You interpret the events that you see therein, and you project upon its glimmer your interpretation of events that may occur. So entranced is your concentration that when you wonder about the nature of reality, you automatically confine your question to this one small flickering moment that you call physical reality. When you ponder upon the aspects of God, you unthinkingly speak of the creator of that one light. That light is unique, and if you truly understood what it was, you would indeed understand the nature of true reality. History, as you think of it, represents but one thin line of probabilities in which you are presently immersed. It does not represent the entire lifetime of your species or the catalog of physical activities, or begin to tell the story of physical creatures, their civilizations, wars, joys, technologies, or triumphs. Reality is far more diverse, far richer and unutterable than you can presently suppose or comprehend. Evolution, as you think of it as it is categorized by your scientists, represents but one probable line of evolution, the one in which, again, you are presently immersed. There are, therefore, many other equally valid, equally real evolutionary developments that have occurred and are occurring and will occur, all within other probable systems of physical reality. The diverse, endless possibilities of development possible could never appear within one slender framework of reality. With splendid innocence and exuberant pride, you imagine that the evolutionary system as you know it is the only one, that physically there can be no more. Now, within the physical reality that you know, there are hints and clues as to the nature of other physical realities. There are latent within your own physical forms other senses, unused, that could have come to the front, but in your probability did not. Now, I've been speaking of earthly developments. Realities, therefore, clustered about earthly aspects as you know them. No evolutionary line is a dead one. Therefore, if in your system it disappeared, it emerges within another. All probable materializations of life and consciousness have their day, and create those conditions within which they can flourish, and their day, in your terms, is eternal. I'm speaking now, in this chapter, mainly about your own planet and solar system, but the same applies to all aspects of your physical universe. You are aware, then, of only one specific delicately balanced but unique portion of physical existence. You are not only creatures of corporeal being, forming images of flesh and blood, embedded in a particular kind of space and time. You are also creatures rising out of a particularized dimension of probabilities, born from dimensions of actuality, richly suited to your own development, enrichment, and growth. If you have any intuitive understanding as yet concerning the nature of the entity or whole self, you will see that it has placed you in a position in which certain abilities, insights, and experience can be realized, and in which your unique kind of consciousness can be nurtured. Your slightest experience has far more repercussions within this multidimensional environment than the physical brain can conceive. For if you are intensely preoccupied with what may seem to be one infinitesimally minute aspect of reality, and while you seem to be completely embedded within it, only the most surface elements of the self are so entranced. I do not like the term surface in this regard, though I've used it to suggest the multitudinous portions of the self that are otherwise engaged, some of them as entranced in their reality as you are in yours. The entity, the true multidimensional self, is aware of all its experiences, and this knowledge is to some extent available to these other portions of the self, including, of course, the physical self as you know it. These various portions of the self, in fact, will eventually, in your terms, become fully aware. Period. This awareness will automatically alter what now seems to be their nature, and to add to the multiplicitude of existence. You may take a break. Session 560, November 2-3, 1970, 9:10 p.m. Monday. Good evening. We will resume dictation. There are many probable systems of reality, therefore, in which physical data predominates. But such physical probabilities represent but one small portion. Each of you also exists in non-physical systems, and I have explained earlier that your slightest thought or emotion is manifested in many other ways than in your own field of existence. Only a portion of your entire identity is presently familiar to you, as you know. Therefore, when you consider the question of a supreme being, you imagine a male personality with those abilities that you yourselves possess, with great emphasis upon qualities you admire. This imagined God has therefore changed throughout your centuries, mirroring man's shifting ideas of himself. God was seen as cruel and powerful when man believed that these were desirable characteristics, needed particularly in his battle for physical survival. He projected these upon his idea of a God because he envied them and feared them. You have cast your idea of God, therefore, in your own image. In a reality that is inconceivably multidimensional, the old concepts of God are relatively meaningless. Even the term, a supreme being, is in itself distortive, for you naturally project the qualities of human nature upon it. If I told you that God was an idea, you would not understand what I meant, for you do not understand the dimensions in which an idea has its reality, or the energy that it can originate and propel. You do not believe in ideas in the same way that you believe in physical objects. So if I tell you that God is an idea, you will misinterpret this to mean that God is less than real, nebulous, without reality, without purpose, and without motive action. Now, your own physical image is the materialization of your idea of yourself within the properties of matter. Without the idea of yourself, your physical image would not be, yet often it is all you are aware of. The initial power and energy of that idea of yourself keeps your image alive. Ideas, then, are far more important than you realize. If you will try to accept the idea that your own existence is multidimensional, that you dwell within the medium of infinite probabilities, then you may catch a slight glimpse of the reality that is behind the word God, and you may understand why it is almost impossible to capture a true understanding of that concept in words. God, therefore, is first of all a creator, not of one physical universe, but of an infinite variety of probable existences, far more vast than those aspects of the physical universe with which your scientists are familiar. He did not simply then send a son to live and die on one small planet. He is a part of all probabilities. There have been parables told and stories of beginnings. All of these have been attempts to transmit knowledge in as simple terms as possible. Often answers were given to questions that literally have no meaning outside of your own system of reality. For example, there was no beginning and there will be no end. Yet parables have been given telling you of beginnings and endings simply because, with your distorted ideas of time, beginnings and endings seem to be inseparable, valid events. As you learn to turn the focus of your attention away from physical reality and therefore experience some slight evidence of other realities, your consciousness will cling to old ideas that make true explanations impossible for you to understand. Multidimensional awareness is available to you in your dreams, however, or in some trance states, and often even beneath ordinary consciousness as you go about your day. This awareness gives personal experience with the multidimensional richness that exists not apart from, but intermingled with, within, through, and all about your physical world of sense. To say that physical life is not real is to deny that reality pervades all appearance, and is a part of all appearance. In the same manner, God does not exist apart from or separate from physical reality, but exists within it and as a part of it, as He exists within and as a part of all other systems of existence. Your Christ figure represents, symbolically, your idea of God and His relationships. There were 3 separate individuals whose history blended, and they became known collectively as Christ, hence many discrepancies in your records. These were all males because at the time of your development you would not have accepted a female counterpart. These individuals were a part of one entity. You could not but imagine God as a father. It would have never occurred to you to imagine a God in any other human terms. Earth components. These 3 figures worked out a drama, highly symbolic, propelled by concentrated energy of great force. The events, as they are recorded, however, did not occur in history. The crucifixion of Christ was a psychic but not a physical event. Ideas of almost unimaginable magnitude were played out. Judas, for example, was not a man in your terms. He was, like all the other disciples, a blessed, created, fragment personality formed by the Christ personality. He represented the self-betrayer. He dramatized a portion of each individual's personality that focuses upon physical reality in a grasping manner and denies the inner self out of greed. Each of the 12 represented qualities of personality that belong to one individual, and Christ, as you know him, represented the inner self. The 12, therefore, plus Christ, as you know of him, the one figure composed of 3, represented an individual earthly personality, the inner self, and the 12 main characteristics connected with the egotistical self. As Christ was surrounded by the disciples, so the inner self is surrounded by these physically oriented characteristics, each drawn outward toward daily reality on the one hand, and yet orbiting the inner self. The disciples, therefore, were given physical reality by the inner self, as all of your earthly characteristics come out of your inner nature. This was a living parable, made flesh among you, a cosmic play worked out for your behalf, couched in terms that you could understand. The lessons were made plain, as all the ideas behind them were personified. If you will forgive the term, this was like a local morality play, put on in your corner of the universe. This does not mean it was less real than you previously supposed. In fact, the implications of what is said here should clearly hint at the more powerful aspects of Godhood. When I go slow, you can rest between the lines. The 3 Christ personalities were born upon your planet and indeed became flesh among you. None of these were crucified. The 12 disciples were materializations from the energies of these 3 personalities, their combined energies. They were then fully endowed with individuality, however, but their main task was to cleverly manifest within themselves certain abilities inherent within all men. The same kinds of dramas in different ways have been given, and while the drama is always different, it is always the same. This does not mean that a Christ has appeared within each system of reality. It means that the idea of God has manifested within each system in a way that is comprehensible to the inhabitants. This drama continues to exist. It does not belong, for example, to your past. Only you have placed it there. This does not mean that it always reoccurs. The drama, then, was far from meaningless, and the Spirit of Christ, in your terms, is legitimate. It is the probable God drama that you chose to perceive. There were others that were perceived, but not by you, and there are other such dramas existing now. You may take a break. Whether or not the crucifixion occurred physically, it was a psychic event, and exists as do all the other events connected with the drama. Many were physical, but some were not. The psychic event affected your world quite as much as the physical one, as is obvious. The whole drama occurred as a result of mankind's need. It was created as a result of that need, grew out of it, but it did not originate within your system reality. Other religions were based upon different dramas in which ideas were acted out in a way that was comprehensible to various cultures. Unfortunately, the differences between the dramas often led to misunderstandings, and these were used as excuses for wars. These dramas are also privately worked out in the dream state. The God-personified figures first were introduced to man in the dream state, and the way then prepared. In visions and inspirations, men knew that the Christ drama would be enacted, and hence recognized it for what it was when it occurred physically. Its power and strength then returned to the dream universe. It had increased its vigor and intensity through the physical materialization. In private dreams, men then related to the main figures in the drama, and in the dream state they recognized its true import. Now, God is more than the sum of all the probable systems of reality. He has created, and yet He is within each one of these without exception. He is therefore within each man and woman. He is also within each spider, shadow, and frog, and this is what man does not like to admit. God can only be experienced, and you experience Him whether you realize it or not, through your own existence. He's not male or female, however, and I use the terms only for convenience sake. In the most inescapable truth, He is not human in your terms at all, nor in your terms is He a personality. Your ideas of personality are too limited to contain the multitudinous facets of His multidimensional existence. On the other hand, He is human, in that He is a portion of each individual, and within the vastness of His experience, He holds an, in quotes and underlined, idea shape of Himself as human, to which you can relate. He literally was made flesh to dwell among you, for He forms your flesh in that He is responsible for the energy that gives vitality and validity to your private multidimensional self, which in turn forms your image in accordance with your own ideas. The private multidimensional self, or the soul, has then an eternal validity. It is upheld, supported, maintained by the energy, the inconceivable vitality of all that is. It cannot be destroyed then, this inner self of yours, nor can it be diminished. It shares in those abilities that are inherent within all that is. It must, therefore, create as it is created, for this is the great giving that is behind all dimensions of existence, the spilling over from the fountain of all that is. Now be the end of our session. Session 561, November 25, 1970, 9:55 p.m., Wednesday. Good evening, and good evening to our friend here. And I will take due note that you, Carl, are smiling this evening. Now, we're going to resume dictation on our book, so you can see an author at work, an authentic ghost writer if you prefer. I will in due time identify the figure of the third Christ personality. Now, however, I am concerned with the multidimensional aspects of all that is. Such a reality can only be experienced. There are no facts that can be given that can portray with any faithfulness the attributes of all that is. This reality and those attributes will appear within various systems of actuality in keeping with the camouflaged data of any given system. The inner experience with the multidimensional God can come in two main areas. One is through the realization that this prime moving force is within everything that you can perceive with your senses. The other method is to realize that this primary motive force has a reality independent of its connection with the world of appearances. All personal contact with the multidimensional God, all legitimate moments of mystic consciousness, will always have a unifying effect. They will not, therefore, isolate the individual involved, but instead will enlarge his perceptions until he will experience the reality and uniqueness of as many other aspects of reality of which he is capable. He will feel, therefore, less isolated and less set apart. He will not regard himself as being above others because of the experience. On the contrary, he will be swept along in a gestalt of comprehension in which he realizes his own oneness with all that is. As there are portions of reality that you do not consciously perceive, and other systems of probability of which you are not consciously aware, so also are there aspects of primary godhood that you cannot at this moment comprehend. There are, therefore, probable gods, each one reflecting in its way the multidimensional aspects of a prime identity, so great and dazzling that no one reality form or particular kind of existence could contain it. I have tried to give you some idea of the far-reaching creative effects of your own thoughts. With that in mind, then, it is impossible to imagine the multidimensional creativities that can be attributed to all that is. The term all that is can be used as a designation to include all of those probable gods in all of their manifestations. Now it is easier perhaps for some of you to understand the simple stories and parables of beginnings of which I have spoken. But the time has come for mankind to take several steps further, to expand the nature of his own consciousness by trying to comprehend a more profound vision of reality. You have outgrown the time of children's tales. When your own thoughts have a form and reality, when they have validity even in other systems of reality of which you are unaware, then it is not difficult to understand why other systems of probabilities are also affected by your own thoughts and emotions, nor why the actions of the probable gods are not affected by what happens in other dimensions of existence. Now you may take your break. Do you have questions? We will end the session. End of chapter. Peace, light, and love. Aloha.